Hola humans, welcome back to the pod, where if you're surviving on spoons, love someone who's surviving on spoons, disabled, or I don't know, just a fan of the pod, welcome back to this week's episode, where it's gonna be really lit. It's gonna be a really lit episode. Okay, like we about to get
Litty
into
lit lit.
all the stuff. So Sash, what's your spoon level today?
Err, Solid one or two. We're there are never enough. Let's just there are never enough spoons.
Yeah, it's true. 2 seconds ago, when we first tried recording this intro, I said I had two spoons, but I'm at a solid one. I don't even know why I said I had two spoons. I'm like dead. I'm very
It's
much
because it was my fault because I made a rookie mistake.
yeah. It's okay. You want to talk about it?
All right, Abby. So today we're talking about something that's been on our minds forever.
Hmm.
Chronic illness through the lens of race and identity. We're calling
Mm.
it the color theory. Because let's be honest, being a spoonie is already like battling a thousand tiny demons.
Honestly, no, for real. Let's talk about it. Today is gonna be mad controversial, and I am so here for it. Because being a spoonie of color, that's like battling legitimately a thousand tiny demons, and then everyone's all whispering like, "Are you sure it's not in your head?"
Honestly, I've had that voice in my head for a
Mm.
long time. It's all in your head. You're faking it. You're not. You're not faking it. But anyway, spoiler, it's not all in our heads. Imagine. Chronic illness can be an invisible battle, but when you add systemic bias, cultural stigma, and
Mhm.
the mental gymnastics required to be taken seriously, it's a whole new level of exhausting.
Yeah, so today we're going to dive into the science of the bias, the psychological toll of medical gaslighting, and the ways identity
Oof.
shapes or chronic illness experience. We'll also share some practical strategies for self-advocacy and maybe debunk a few medical misconceptions along the way. And I do want to put here, we are not saying that if you're not of color, that you don't experience medical gaslighting. We are saying that
No.
medical gaslighting happens a lot more frequently people who are of color. And it's a completely different type of medical gaslighting because it is rooted in systemic racism and bias towards people of color and health issues and like years, maybe centuries and decades of medical misconceptions regarding people of color. And some of them are just being debunked in the past century, last year, decade. So let's start with some cold hard facts because, TJ here. Facts are my love language. So there's an
Aren't they?
extensive amount of research showing that medical professionals consistently underestimate the pain level of patients of colors. And this is not just in the chronic illness world, but it's even especially in the maternal rate. Like if you guys do a deep dive into specifically Black women and pregnancy, like that's a whole other thing I could get into, but I won't. But if you dive into
Hmm.
that world of like pregnancy, maternal, Black mothers, that whole thing, the fatality rates, the pain levels, all of that stuff. It's a whole world. There's so many documentaries on it. But a 2016 study from the University of Virginia, it's called Racial Bias in Pain Assessment and Treatment Recommendations, false beliefs about biological differences between the Blacks and the whites found that nearly 40% of surveyed medical students believe that Black patients have thicker skin or less sensitive nerve endings than white patients.
Wait. So like legit thicker skin, like physically.
Like anatomically thicker skin, sis.
That's
Or
crazy.
like the melanin is what made us thicker. Okay. It's like
Thick.
they literally thought that it was thicker, like, 1 or 2 inches. I don't know what these people were thinking. This is the level of pseudoscientific nonsense that we're dealing with here in the medical community and chronic illness community as people of color. Like this myth dates all the way back to 19th century racist medical practices. And apparently, come to find out, it never fully died.
Bruh. It's like people are running a side hustle in medical misinformation just for centuries, just
Oh,
keeping it
mm-hmm.
going.
And for free. Literally. So like basically, because
3.99.
literally, and this bias leads to measurable differences in treatment. Okay. we can look at so many studies on how Black and Hispanic patients, even Asian patients, receive less pain medication than white patients with the identical symptoms and conditions. And
Mm.
I've witnessed that. Not in my practice, not like, as a student in healthcare or someone who works in healthcare, but as someone who's Spoonie of color, who will have a more chronic
Mm.
condition than maybe my white counterpart, but my white counterpart will get higher treatment for it, more intense treatment for it than I will. And they've called it out too. Um, and for conditions like lupus or multiple sclerosis, both of which disproportionately impact women of color, delayed diagnosis is common because symptoms are dismissed as anxiety and stress. And I just want to pause here because I have a quick story that just popped into my brain cells. I have a classmate,
Ooh, story time. Tell us.
and she just got diagnosed with MS in October. And they did not catch it for years. And like she's kind of more like, yeah, I have MS, but like, I don't really know like all the deets of it. And so like I gave her an answer. I'm like, hey, we need to talk. We need to like actually sit down and like talk about this. So, like we can really dive into, what this world of color, spoony world is of color. And she's like, I was like, how did you just get treated, like diagnosed at 26, like if you've had symptoms your whole life? She's like, well, it was literally like we thought it was, this, we thought it was that. And a lot of the times, like, I was in therapy because we thought it was like severe stress and anxiety. And that made me annoyed. And then there's a counterpart of somebody that
Mm.
I follow on Instagram who had less severe symptoms than my friend did. And she immediately got an MRI of her spine and brain to check for lesions immediately. And they caught her case so early, so she's way less symptomatic because, her doctor immediately believed her and didn't blow it off as stress and anxiety. But there are so many countless times that you'll find women who have lupus, MS, specific conditions I'm talking about because they are predominantly with women of color, um,
Mhm.
or and people of color, and it will be oftentimes dismissed as anxiety and stress. And then if you advocate for yourself, which we'll talk about later in the podcast, you're looked as aggressive.
Mm. Mm. Honestly, and it just makes me really mad. Like, mad is not even covering it. Furious is the word. It's a better word because I can't even tell you how many times, just for me and my journey personally, I've heard so many different versions of dismissive statements. Like, just the vanilla one is, oh, you're just stressed. But there are so many
Mm,
different variations of that statement when
mm,
literally you're in the middle of whatever flare you're in, whether it's a pain flare and that's I feel like that's the one that gets talked about the most, but there are so many different kinds of flares that don't even include pain, you know,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
but literally people will tell you, oh, you're just stressed,
mm-hmm,
you need to go and relax, go do
mm-hmm.
some yoga, drink some, and I'm just like,
Drink some ginger tea.
bro,
What is
ginger
it
tea
with
is
the
what they
ginger
say.
tea? Like I love ginger tea, but like what is it with the ginger tea that's always a suggestion? I don't even know. And
I know.
the thing is like this dismissal, it's not just infuriating, frustrating, it's literally psychologically damaging. Because chronic illness
Hmm.
already
It makes you
messes with your
second guess
sense.
yourself.
Exactly, exactly. And I second guess myself. I've been diagnosed with gastroparesis for over like 5 years. Had a doctor
Ooh,
straight up
girl.
gaslight me. And I literally came home and I'm like,
Girl.
Sasha, what if I don't have gastroparesis? Knowing that I'm so symptomatic, literally was symptomatic that day. Okay. But I was like, maybe I don't have it, you know? And so like chronic illness already messes with your sense of reality because symptoms are often invisible, they're unpredictable. And if you're someone who has more of an invisible disability, you may not even feel like, I'm really disabled or
Like
chronically
really
ill.
feeling it.
Exactly.
Or like
Um,
justified.
exactly. But when healthcare professionals who are the experts minimize your experience, it triggers what medical professionals or neuroscientists will call epi, I'm gonna mess this word up, epistemic injustice.
Yeah, that's a word. I'm not even going to try and tackle that. But please break that down for the science brains in the room.
Okay, I'm gonna break it down for the science brains and non-science brains in the
Break
room.
it down, break it down.
hmm So, science epistemic injustice is when someone's knowledge or lived experience is invalidated because of societal bias. For the
Mm.
studies of color, this happens often in medical settings. You know your body, you know your pain, but when doctors dismiss that reality, it makes you question your own perception.
Honestly, I have a very real story of like of this,
Okay,
and
sure.
it's making me think about it. So I have been struggling for the longest time. Like, I can't even clock it. It's been like 3 or 4 years now of just this sweating, these night sweats, where you would not even believe. I sweat rivers, people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I go to my primary care provider, like you're supposed to. Because if you go onto the internet, sidebar, if you go onto the internet and you research night sweats, they give you a list of things that it could be, and they're very serious. And you're told, you should seek medical attention for this if it's, persistent. And so I did. And I go to my nurse practitioner. She was my provider at one point. And I am experiencing really bad night sweats. Like I literally tried everything in my power. I've tried making my room colder. I've tried showering in cold water right before I go to bed. Like literally anything that you can think of to deal with something like that. And she literally laughed. And she was like, you should probably stop sleeping with your blankie at night. She literally said those words. And I was sitting there in the room, dumbfounded. I actually started to laugh because not because of what she said was funny, but like, are you serious? you know? And it made me think like maybe I'm not doing everything in my power to deal with this. It really makes you sit there and think. And so you start to think, maybe I am being dramatic. Maybe I can just power through. But literally I've been dealing with this for years, guys, and you just can't. You can't. When you try, you can't.
What if I had a solution for you? Just go move to Antarctica.
The plot twist is that I would probably still sweat rivers.
She would. So, it's the truth is though, like your brain starts playing this game of symptom imposter syndrome. You start gaslighting yourself, which makes it even harder to advocate for proper care because you're second guessing. You're like, okay, wait, do I actually have this pain? Am I okay? Like, and I had that with migraines. Like I was in denial for so long, um, because
You
I
guys
had
wouldn't believe.
Yes, like I chronic, crippling, debilitating migraines, guys. Like I was in bed and I was like, it's just a headache. And that actually stemmed from 2019, me going to see a neurologist because of my quote unquote migraines that I was saying I had. And he told me it was insomnia and told me to get over-the-counter melatonin and then called a psychiatrist in the room because he was like, maybe it's also anxiety. And so
Mm.
when Sasha was trying to convince me the whole time I had migraines, it actually stemmed all the way back to me not believing myself because I'm like, they told me it was just headaches. And so you start to second guess yourself, and then you can't advocate because if you don't actually believe what you're advocating for, you can't properly advocate.
Yeah, and that self-doubt isn't random. It's reinforced by cultural messaging, right? Like in my family, strength is sacred. And if you're not pushing through your pain, you just weren't trying hard enough, you know?
Hmm. Oh yeah. And that mindset is rooted in survival. And it doesn't really work when mitochondria decide they're contributing to the energy of the, the economy. So like they don't work for you anymore. You know what I'm trying to say? So like you can't push through pain when you legit, on a very serious note, though, have like backfiring mitochondria that just you don't get energy. When your body is falling apart, when your autoimmune is attacking each other, when you are literally having neurological dysfunction in your body, pushing through doesn't work. But it's been so ingrained in people of color for years that you push through, you adapt, you overcome, you push
Exactly.
through, that you get chronically ill. It doesn't change out of your mind. You know what I'm trying to say? And
Hmm.
so it's intense.
It really is intense. And I think that's something that we need to, take a look at that mindset, because it's something that we've had to deal with for generations,
Hmm.
that pushing through mentality.
Hmm.
But let's talk about cultural stigma for a minute because the pressure to, quote, just deal with it hits differently when you're part of a community that's historically had to survive without reliable medical care.
Ooh, that part. For a lot of communities of color, there's a deep-rooted mistrust of the healthcare system. And guys,
Mm,
Let me tell you right now, for any medical professional listening, it's not paranoia. Like, we're
mm,
talking about historical realities, like the Tuskegee syphilis experiments, forced sterilizations. We won't even talk about some of them, but like ongoing
so much.
disparities in POC maternal mortality rates, like I talked about at the beginning. It's a crazy crisis. And so the mistrust that a lot of people of color have in the medical system, especially when a lot of people that look like us are not always in the medical system and they're far and few in between, it is very, a very, very, very true reality that a lot of people that are not of color don't think about.
Exactly. So on the one hand, you grow up hearing doctors don't care about people like us. You can't trust them, you know?
Mm,
And on the other hand, you're supposed to go into these same places and advocate for yourself like a seasoned trial attorney. It doesn't add up.
I know. And when we do advocate for ourselves, we're often labeled as difficult or non-compliant. And there's actual research on this that assertive Black patients, for example, are more likely to have their symptoms downplayed compared to white present patients who may present the same way.
It's definitely a lose-lose situation. Either you're too passive and you get dismissed, or you're too assertive and get labeled as aggressive. And I've had to think about that in my own medical journey because I used to be really, really proud that I was, a healthy person,
Mm,
didn't really have any problems, and not even recognizing the fact that I was suffering from migraine as a child and just, didn't even know it. And so I'm coming into this as an adult, like, okay, how do I how do I explain how much pain I'm in
mm-hmm,
without, being too much, being that
mm-hmm, or
black woman, the
complaining.
crazy black woman.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah, or complaining too much, or, being too passive where they're like, oh, she's just it's not that serious, you
mm-hmm,
know? So like
mm-hmm,
your inner thoughts are just whispering, smile more, maybe they'll believe you. It's
mm-hmm.
so diabolically crazy.
It is. And so it's like, how do we navigate this absurd reality? Well, as much as I'd love to smite systemic bias with a lightning bolt, we have to start with what we can control. Unfortunately, I cannot do that. I would if I could. Please believe me.
She wants
Um,
to be Zeus.
yeah, so here are
Strike them
some
down.
science for real, for real. Here's some science, like I think, backed strategies that have helped me stay grounded, helped me be able to advocate for myself, and even some that I've shared with Sasha. And though I may not mention this here, I want to just put a plug in here, and this is something I'm going to be talking about my social media too. You can fire your people. If you have a provider that you find is
Oof.
being racist, if you find
Ah,
that is not providing what you need, maybe gaslighting you, and you feel like it may be because of the color of your skin. I don't know. You 100% employ them, so you 100% can fire them. Find somebody else who believes you and who will advocate for
say
you
it
because
louder.
that makes a huge difference in your journey being chronically ill. I cannot tell you the amount of doctors that I've fired, the amount of ones that I've interviewed before I even said I'm not establishing practice. I'm just here to figure out whether or not we're a good fit for each other. And I know they looked at me weird, but I don't care because let me tell you right now, I have an amazing primary care doctor who has told me to fire some of my other doctors because they've been mistreating me. And it didn't just take, everyone's like, how did you find her? Because I interviewed a crap ton of doctors and I interviewed her, had two appointments that I considered trial appointments before I fully established care with her. Because it is important as
Hmm.
people of color, as women of color, especially that we make sure that we find help and we get medical care with someone who will advocate for us and not push us to the side.
And that's something that doesn't get talked about at all. Like I didn't even think about that concept until you told me that. Like at the beginning of my journey,
Yeah.
like Abby's actually telling me, yeah, you can fire your doctor. I'm like, you can do that? Like I always feel like obligated to, have this feeling of, oh, you're spending your time with me, therefore I have to, be appreciative of the time that you're spending with me,
Hmm.
and I never felt like I could fire them.
Hmm.
But anyway, go
Hmm.
on.
Oh yeah. And my mom and stuff like that, like, we doesn't run in my family, but there's always a first. And that happened to be me. So they've been great though. And that type of stuff. And building that medical team is so majorly important because you really can't get the help that you need until you have the medical people who will
Hmm.
advocate for you.
One of the queens of self-doubt. Like I
Same.
really need to stop saying, maybe I just need to hydrate. Maybe, you could come up with so many maybe I could statements. Like maybe I need to go and exercise more. Maybe I just need to,
And I'm an INTJ. I'm like wired to optimize everything, even my downtime, okay? Like, and I literally like cannot remember other than my parents being sick and like my family being sick, we don't like just rest. Like you know what I'm trying to say? Like even vacation, I don't know about your family, but like that's not like a thing. You know what I mean? Like we don't just lay
right,
down. Like you know what I'm trying to say? Like on like days we're not at church,
exactly.
we're like cleaning up the yard and then we're at work. And you know, it's like this and like rest days are Saturdays, like, you know, for church and stuff like that. It's like otherwise
Hmm.
it's just like and even on
Go,
those
go,
days we're
go.
at church. You have to learn to rest without guilt.
Our next tip, which is it's one of my favorites because I've been doing this for the longest time. My go-to is symptom tracking. Like that's
Hmm.
the best way to know what your actual triggers are in that moment, what to avoid. You really should do it regularly to, have good data to bring to your doctors and stuff. But I have a couple of apps, and if you guys want the apps that I use, just go ahead and shoot me a DM. But yeah, in my apps, it's way more detailed than I'm a music teacher, but it's way more detailed than my students' music practice logs. So you really got to be really detailed with them. But frequency, duration, intensity, triggers, you name it, record it. Your data speaks for you, I would say, more often than your actual work. Yeah. Plus, if they still dismiss you, you can just politely ask, can you document it in my chart that I've reported these symptoms and you're choosing not to investigate further? And you will see their attitude change. Because when something's
100.
on paper, you cannot argue that. They can't.
So it's shifting the narrative really. Because the reality is chronic illness, it doesn't discriminate, okay? But society does. And when you live at the intersection of a disability and racial identity, the battle for validation, it gets so complicated and so muddy. And let me tell you right now, if a doctor tries to tell you otherwise, remember
Mm-hmm.
you've already survived more than they'll ever know, okay?
Mm.
Advocate safely, rest unapologetically, and never ever let the devil convince you it's all in your head.
Right. Exactly. And I feel like I was kind of blessed because at least with migraine, I had a built-in support group
Mm-hmm.
because migraine has been in my family on my mom's side for generations. My great grandma, my grandma, my mom, and now me.
Mm-hmm.
So I had almost been like prepped for this. And so when when I realized that it happened, because again, I've said this, I'd been having migraines since I was a child, but when I recognized it for what it was when I was 18, they were already there for me. My mom was already telling me stuff that I needed to know. And my grandma was already helping me, try stuff like soaking your feet in hot water. Like I had already been through the runaround with migraine. And even when more symptoms showed up, they were there for me. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
foreign to them. They were able to
Mm-hmm.
help talk me through a lot of
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. So finding your people is so important. Building
Mm-hmm.
that medical team that is there for you. So
You
what
know
is
it.
it we should know it?
Just
Yes. I'm still
I
trying to
have
figure that one out. Yeah. That one is such a big one. And it's something that I was talking to my um, therapist about. I think it was last week because I'm trying to figure out strategies for pain management. And so one of those is, doing things in short bursts, resting in between. Like you don't have to like fully fall asleep to be resting, just sit
mm-hmm.
down and
Mm-hmm.
not do anything. And live in a family of color, be watching to see, are my parents coming around the corner? Can I hear them? Because there was always this anxiety of if they catch me not doing anything, I'm gonna get put to work, you know?
Exactly.
It defeats the purpose of resting for sure. But we have to remember that we're not alone in this fight,
Mm.
and we don't have to carry the burden of proving our pain, you know? Our experiences are very real. Our bodies are real. Our
Mm-hmm.
worth isn't tied to anyone else's perception of who we are. Well, thank you all for tuning into the pod today. Don't forget to share it with everyone you know. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on all the platforms at Surviving on Spoons. All one word, no dots, no dashes. And yeah, have a great day. Bye.